feel when your numbers go up and they hear you. They start following your message cause they feel you. Haters in the rear view wanna ruin plans. Don't be startled, they just low-key fans. They tight like bands on the fresh stack. Knowing Rolo runs the city, bringing hip-hop back for the 51st year with my loquacious bands. Now this ain't no love.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Rolo Runs the City podcast. I am your host Rolo, and I am very grateful to be here with you guys today for another episode. And of course, this episode is near and dear to the heart, as well as all the episodes are. It comes out of the heart and goes into the microphone, and of course to the video if you're streaming on YouTube. But anywho, just might as well go over the particulars. If you guys want, feel free to hit me up on the socials. I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Rolo Runs the City Podcast, as well as Rolo Runs the City Music. I'm also on X at Rolo Runs the City. And not to forget, on YouTube, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I am Rolo Runs the City. That's where we're at Rolo Runs the City. Feel free to look it up. We're there. And don't forget all things Rolo. Of course, you can go to RoloRunsTheCity.com. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into this episode. And this episode is called Mindset Shifts That Changed My Life. And I felt that this was something that was very key to put out, into the world, of course, because we all go through different things at different times in our lives. And majority of the people, unfortunately, don't recognize their own demise. So if you're in your 50s and you're still operating like you did in your 20s, then you're probably going to be in a world of hurt. And the reason why I say that is because I believe Muhammad Ali had a great quote talking about a man who has done, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but he said, if you're the same person 30 years from now that you were, back in your 20s, then you've just wasted 30 years of your life. So I know it's not the exact quote, but that is the messaging. And that just rings true so much to how people never upgrade their software. All the time, you have people that want to, have the latest fashion, or they want to have the latest technology, or, add some sort of amenity to their home, but they never really upgrade their software. And I'm talking about their mindset, their thinking, or even their hardware for that matter, which is their physical body. Unfortunately, as time goes, people tend to decline, but how rapid do you want to decline? So I believe mindset is everything. And like I said, unfortunately, many people don't recognize that they do need a mindset shift, and it will absolutely change your life. If you're at a place where you're playing it safe and you're like, I'm going to just stay here because I'm safe, no matter what, you're going to be in a downward spiral. So you might as well take the risks that are necessary to better yourself, because on the other side of the challenge is the person you want to become. Obviously, we already know that. But, I can, bring it back to my moments of growing up in poverty, growing up in public housing, from, being born in public housing in Brooklyn, New York, to relocating to Lawrence, Massachusetts, and being subjected to public housing once again. You see several different things. Unfortunately, I don't really want to elaborate, but, for anybody who has, any sense or idea of what, living in the projects is like, then if you're thinking that there's a lot of things that not everyday people see every day, then you're probably right. It's just, it's an unfortunate situation that many kids have to go through. A lot of outlets that people try to seek out, of course, they either want to get into the entertainment business or they want to get into sports. Not saying that there aren't folks that go out and become absolute grand professionals. They do. The why is strong enough, therefore they're able to execute, but it's not common, and it should be, because we should harp more on how important education is, as opposed to wanting to try to get into some sort of athletic space just to hurry up and get the bag, or, hopefully I can make it out and become a famous rapper and make a lot of money. And, at the end of the day, you're still compromising who you are, unfortunately, especially when you're seeking out and the levels of a lot of what a lot of people do who get into the entertainment industry. You know, it's like, okay, like on some real stuff, it's like, I want your soul. You know what I mean? It's unfortunate, but you know, there's people who actually compromise their morals for the bag, so to speak. But you know, but it's, you know, mindset, like I said, is everything. And growing up in poverty was, you know, something that I don't recommend anybody subject themselves to, but they end up doing it anyway. I recall when my mom got into public housing when we relocated to Massachusetts, and it was absolutely, it was sad. Okay, I don't know any other adjective to just represent the situation, but it was just sad. I mean, she was happy like she bought a house, you know, like, you know, first time homeowner, how they would feel about getting, you know, their first home purchased. This is how she felt when she got accepted to get into public housing. She thought about, you know, Section 8 low rent. She thought about not having to pay for light, water, gas. She was just all outright just ecstatic about being in this situation where she didn't have to stress so much about, you know, paying utilities. And, you know, as a kid growing up, you knew that it was wrong. Like something was wrong. Like we shouldn't be striving for this. And unfortunately, that was what she was striving for. And there's no other way to put it but just downright sad. And I'm not knocking her as an individual. It's a sad situation because people in general have a faulty mindset. They think their problems will go away by having less responsibility, therefore they don't want to stress. But these are the folks that are being subjected to the most stress because everything is internally, you know, like I said, it's stress induced internally. You know, there's no outside factors. It's almost like you're your own worst enemy. And it was an absolute it was an absolute shame to just see this. You know, I remember one of the last conversations I ever had with my mother. You know, unfortunately, we fell out. She's passed away now. Um, I remember I had a conversation with her, and I just told her that I just felt bad for her because she was so she had a fixed mindset. Um, she was just stubborn. Change is the inevitable, and she just didn't want to accept that. As opposed to being adaptable, she just thought everything was just going to stay the same. Unfortunately, this led to, you know, her death prematurely. She was only 69 years old. So I know I'm kind of getting a little personal here, but you know, this is something that I see, you know, for myself, where I'm like, wow, she was very young, and you know, she at that time was her own worst enemy, and it's absolutely unfortunate because she never really got to experience, you know, being a grandmother, you know, taking care of her grandchildren, being there. Um, these are things that I look at, and it makes me want to ensure that I do everything that I can with my health, decision making, things of that nature. Look, whenever God wants you, He's going to call you. You're going home. But you know, I always say to people all the time is like, I'm not scared of death. I'm just far from ready. I just feel like I still have more things to do on this earth prior to, you know, meeting my Lord and Savior. But I also feel like I'm doing His work here. And it's up to me to ensure that I leave this place better than I found it. And that should be everybody's mentality. And, you know, when you grow up in poverty, you don't have that mindset. So, you know, going back to my mother, I had this conversation with her. I just told her, I said, I just feel bad that you think the way you think. You're just very limited, and you could have done so much more with your life. And because of the fact that you were, and it is what it is. I call people out. It doesn't matter, even if you're my mother. Like I said, just being the fact that you're lazy and not willing to put in the work, you unfortunately are living the life that you're living. So, needless to say, she wasn't happy with that statement, but it is what it is. Rest in peace to her. I'm not. I was angry at her for a while. I'm not angry with her anymore. I forgive her. In order to forgive myself and get past things, I said, you have to let that go and forgive her at the end of the day. She brought you here. Honor your mother because of the fact that without her, there's no you. So I'm absolutely appreciative of her. I love her. She's my mom. And yeah, this ain't that type of episode, but I guess I went there, right? But it was just a great, a great example to bring up about people suffering from poverty. And like I said, if you don't upgrade your mind, everything else is gonna. It's a trickle effect. You know what I mean? It's like people don't understand that hard work, you know, upgrading your mindset, everything is a byproduct aesthetically. So if you understand that the work needs to be put forward, you won't be subjected to such lifestyles. But you have to have a hunger to rise above. And the reason why I say that is because, for me, as a kid growing up, I would watch movies, and obviously, Hollywood was very big back in the '80s or whatnot. You seeing beautiful California, sunny beaches, 6 foot blondes. Like, I'm growing up all the way on the other side of the coast, and the East Coast, and I'm like, I'm in, just wet weather all the time. I mean, Boston's nasty. Boston's about the equivalent of Seattle, Washington. Like, especially in the summer, like it just rains, man. It is what it is, right? And you're looking at sunny beaches, mansions, beautiful women. And I'm like, okay, like this exists somewhere. This is before AI started taking off. Now with, artificial intelligence, we just don't know what's real and what's fake anymore. But, I definitely knew these were real images, even though they were part of movie sets and they were representations of life somewhere. I said, this is occurring somewhere. And that was basically one of the reasons why I wanted to join the military, because I said I got to find a way out of here. I got to find a way out of this poverty situation. And I was able to actually do that by raising my right hand and joining Uncle Sam's army as an enlisted soldier. So I just had that hunger to want to do something different. I knew I was different. I always used to say it all the time. Whenever I used to go to work, I used to see my mom when I went home, and she'd just be laying on the couch. And I would always tell her all the time, I was like, there you go, ruining the economy. And the only reason why I would tell her that is because I knew that she was collecting a government check and she was not contributing anything to society. So even though it did sound funny at the same time, maybe a little condescending, but it was absolute truth. So I wanted to make sure that my life was different as opposed to the way she was, carrying her life out. But I'll be honest with you. When I joined the army, I was just, stuck in a fixed mindset as well. I was just scared of succeeding. Some people are always like scared of failure. And the crazy thing about it is failure never scared me because I felt like I was failing all my life. I'm talking about from school. I had a learning disability, dealing with that, got special needs services in school, just basically trying to follow along, suffered, tremendously as a kid with several different illnesses, to even name. And I'm just glad that I was able to actually, propel myself forward as a human being, absolutely recognizing, from not wanting to take Ritalin anymore, things of that nature. And, I was glad that I was absolutely able to own in on who I needed to be. So like I said, I felt like I had been failing on my whole life. However, I did see that there were, differences in the way people carried themselves. And, for me, I knew one thing was like, I didn't like how I felt when I was on medication as a kid. I was like, I'm getting off of it. I don't want to do it. And my mom would try to give it to me, and I'm like, I don't want it. And I wouldn't take it, you know, obviously for several different reasons of being on Ritalin. Of course, ADD at the time was definitely one of the things. But, at the end of the day, I said, I'm not so much of scared of failure. I was just scared of succeeding. It's almost like I knew my own potential, but I was scared of what that may bring in reference to responsibility. So, I looked at when I went to the military, dealing with structure, discipline, brotherhood, all that stuff was unfamiliar to me. I was so used to being a taker. I was a person who didn't really give. Like it's funny, like I used to have friends that would they would absolutely like be very nice to me. They would share like snacks, like if they had chips or candy, whatever. And I was always like, because I never had money to like go to the school store and buy something and and want to share. And I've never really was taught that as a child, that sharing is caring. You know what I mean? And I've never learned the laws of reciprocity and putting good out into the earth. And I never grew up with those values. So as an adult, when I started growing up and seeing how the most fulfilled human beings are the ones that actually serve their community and help their people and just share and just it brings them great joy, I said, man, I want that feeling too. So as a parent, going on the parent aspect of trying to instill this in my children, I did everything that I could to show them that service is the secret of life. The secret of living is giving, and that's the truth. And I didn't know anything about that. And I definitely wanted to make sure that I wanted them to grow up with different ideals as opposed to what I grew up with. So, like I said, this comes with, upgrading your software. And I always tell my daughter all the time, I tell my son too, like my ceiling is their floor. So with that being said, where I'm stopping, they're going to continue to ascend because that's just the way things are. I recall looking at old pictures in a photo album of my family, and I said, wow, they had nice threads. I mean, I'm talking about, this is like the 1960s. Like, this is old, obviously. But they had nice threads. And, I recall my uncles wearing suits with ties, and they were young. They were probably like maybe 12, 13, maybe 15, the oldest, like 15 years old. And, that led me to believe that at the time, with my grandmother and my grandfather, of course, they, both came from Puerto Rico. Granddad was a hardworking individual, and it just let me know. And I talk about this all the time. I say I'm so grateful of being in the position that I'm in because my ancestors sacrificed so I can be in this position right now. And I think as early as that time back in the 60s when I seen that picture, I said, this is sad because I see, whether if they were affluent or not, which I don't believe they were, but I do believe that my grandfather was hardworking. Obviously, he did what he had to do to make sure that his kids were in nice threads and just make sure that, they were presentable and always, ready to go and just outright look nice. And I used to see those pictures, and I seen how I was growing up in public housing. And obviously, my grandfather had he had a brownstone almost like worth $1 million right now. When he passed away, I mean, they sold it or whatever, and Lord knows what they did with the money, right? But I didn't get any of it. I didn't want it, but you know what I'm saying? I damn sure didn't get none. So if you think I got some, I got nothing. But anyway, um, you know, they were hardworking. He was a hardworking individual, and it led me to believe where, I believe he was a part of the silent generation, right? This was prior to the boomers. Obviously, my mom was a boomer, but it just led me to believe that generations down the line, you have hardworking folks, and then you have a generation or two that messes up the bloodline. And the reason why I say that is it could be, like I said, spiritually, financially, emotionally, physically, like something happens to where like there's a disruption. And I think it comes to a lack of wanting to get things done. I think it comes from based straight out of laziness. And I believe that where my mom may have dropped the ball was the fact that she didn't want to put foot to ass to get things done, to carry on and keep building using her dad's ceiling as her floor and to keep ascending. And I'm just saying her in reference to the situation of having to upgrade your software. She's not the only, like, she's not an anomaly of like bad things to happen. I mean, this is too common in communities that deal with poverty. And I'm just urging people to don't be scared of the work. Don't be lazy. I understand it. A lot of times there are jobs that just don't pay enough. I get it. Like, they're just going to pay you based on your skill set. Look, if you're flipping a burger, you're not making much. But the best thing that you can do is own in on your skill. Take care of your work ethic. Punctuality is key. The best ability is availability. And of course, durability. So a lot of people don't understand that they're going to get replaced by AI. They're going to get replaced by some sort of machine because of the fact that, like they say, machines don't call off. I get it. Although they break down, but they don't call off. But the best thing that you can do is always continue to put your best foot forward by putting your work in. I'm not saying put work first, but just put your work in. At the end of the day, we all have a purpose. And our purpose is to be fulfilled by what God wants to put in our hearts. So we have to make sure we do that. You know what I mean? Like for me, I'm not saying it's a purpose, but it's something that I hate doing. I hate running. Rolo runs the city, hates running. But like I said, with so many people that I've seen that they were a detriment to themselves is the reason why I run. Like, I know what the other side looks like. It's like, I may not like it. I may not like putting in that work to run. But the reason why I do it is because I know what the other side looks like. And it's something that I don't want. There's nothing but illness, demise, and despair. I don't want to go through any of that crap because of the fact that I'm just being lazy. So even though I may hate running, I do to this day. I mean, like, I hated running in the Army, still hate it now, but the reason why I run is because I know what that other side looks like. Not only that, but of course, when I run marathons, like, you have a lot of time to think. Like, you got 26.2 miles to like think about life decisions, what you're doing. It brings a lot of clarity. You know what I mean? And, it's also one of those things that are great to do because it's really helps with, enduring, like, how long can you last? Like, and that's key to personal growth. You know what I'm saying? Like, how much can you take before you decide to say, I don't want to do this anymore? And if you are totally beat down and you're like, dude, I'm ready for more. Like, that's when you're a different human being. And I remember when, I was jacked up on my last marathon. You guys already know about this who's been watching me. When I was jacked up on that last marathon, I will tell you this. I could not get it out. Like, I could not output anymore. But when I crossed the finish line, I said, man, if I needed to run another 7 to 8 miles, I would do it because I just had to finish. So that's a mindset thing, you know. But for me, I'm not trying to bounce back and forth, but you go from running. Another thing you deal with is, for me personally, is I coach my son's Miracle League team. They're a special needs baseball team. It's an excellent opportunity for me. Anybody who knows me knows that before my son was diagnosed with autism, I was trying to volunteer for the Special Olympics. And I wanted to help kids out because I'm like, man, I think it would be a really cool experience to be a part of. Just, that's just the service and me wanting to, give back to help out. And, I'll be honest with you. I think I'm a bit selfish because it feeds my soul, right? But the funny thing is, I think that's the thing about being selfless. In order for you to be selfless, you got to be a little selfish. So for me, when I'm watching the kids play, it just brings so much joy to me. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I love being here. I love doing this. And it's kind of selfishly like, dude, this is awesome. Like, I love to do this. Like, it feeds my soul, right? But I know what it's doing for them. Like, one thing that I appreciate about my Miracle League teams is that I couldn't work with, I guess you want to say, regular athletes, because I look at folks like, not even knocking them, it is what it is, and I do appreciate the authenticity and the truth. I remember Randy Moss said that he would take plays off, and he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. So I think if he didn't take plays off, there will be no question on who was the best wide receiver of all time in the NFL. Everybody talks about Jerry Rice. Obviously, Jerry Rice had great work ethic. He didn't take plays off. Like, he always made sure that he always, hit the ground running. I mean, from 0 to 60 in 0.2 seconds, like, he would floor it. And I think one of the issues that we have with quote unquote regular athletes is the fact that they have the choice of whether they want to take plays off or whether they don't want to give it their all. Where with my special needs baseball team, they know nothing but go. You know what I mean? Like, all they know is to give their best effort. There's no decision making. They know, I need to get this done. And that's something that we could all learn, is just get things done. Don't be paralyzed by analysis. Do what you got to do. Get it done. That's it. And that's one of the greatest things that I love working with this special needs baseball team is the fact that the work is there. The work ethic is there. And there's no decision on, oh, I'm not going to do this. Like, no. They do it. They get it done. And you greatly appreciate it. And the reason why you appreciate it is because it's like, man, people need to see this more. Because if they understood how hard that these folks are working, they'll say, man, and I have supposedly all the ability in the world and I'm doing nothing with it. Will people, want to try to work? I don't know, maybe. I think people are, a lot of people are freaking lazy. You know what I mean? So when I'm coaching this team, I see them not only upgrading their software, but they're upgrading their skills every time, because I recall when my son hit the baseball, he would go chase the baseball down the first base line. He's not doing that now. Now, he hits the ball, goes to first base, waits for the next batter, hits the ball, he's going to second base. So it goes to show you that he's putting the effort to learn the game and to go 100 miles an hour. There's a lot of folks that have these natural gifts and abilities, and they get caught up with the decision of, I am going to be a lazy ass today and I'm not going to do anything. So it is what it is. But anyway, core mindset shifts that I went through. You know, I went from scarcity to abundance. You know, always thinking, oh man, I'm on my last. I don't know what I gotta do. Oh man, we got more month than money. We're running out. I thank God we don't go through that anymore. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that, you know, it can't happen to anybody because God knows how to humble people. But that's why I am so gracious and I'm so humble because I know every day is a gift and nothing is guaranteed. But I always do the best that I can to put my best foot forward so then that way I can continue to do the work in His image. So that let me know I can't be in a scarcity mindset. And ever since I've rid of that, like my life has been abundant since then. And that just goes beyond finances, of course. But like I said, it's just, you know, I've been absolutely blessed and I'm grateful. You know what I mean? I went from survival to living with intention. And the reason why I say that is because I was always trying to figure out my way and what I was trying to get done with my life. And when you start intentionally living, that's when the game changes for you. You know what I mean? You start being more purposeful for your community. You start being more of an asset to your family. You start taking your health, your mental well-being more seriously. You know, your spirituality, you take it to another notch. I know that I have. I'm absolutely grateful for my Creator, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Without Him, nothing is possible. So I know that living with intention is the best way to go. And like I said, the secret to living is giving. So the best thing you could do is serve. And I didn't recognize that at the time when I enlisted when I was in the United States military. But like I said, I had my wake up moment and figured it out when 9/11 happened. And that's why I said, man, that's why I'm here. I'm here because I'm doing what, you know, not everybody else can. So, you know, it's time to get to work. But you know, like I said, selfish habits leading to selfless service. You know, like I said, dating back to when I was a kid and growing up with learning how to share or not having and always taking and just being a taker, you know. So I'm glad to say that as a parent, I've taught my children better. And I'm absolutely grateful for that. And I went from defeat to resilience, man, you know. And I'm not saying that I'm the only one that's been through that. There's many people who have stood the test and that has become their testimony where they've been able to stand the test of time. And this goes farther than, you know, just running, finishing a marathon injured or whatnot. But this comes from like climbing out of poverty and making sure that, you know, the bloodline you came from, you don't keep carrying, you know, whatever negative stigma that has come from that, you know, into future existence on what comes from you. And like I said, people have sacrificed in order for me to be here. And I will make sure that I honor those ancestors, you know, and just because you've had a couple of lazy generations kind of set your bloodline back, you know, a few, I don't want to say quarter century or anything, or, you know, or a century, but, you know, maybe decades, who knows, right? But my thing is, in order for me to honor my ancestors, I have to keep on propelling myself to keep moving forward, as well as ensuring that I set up my kids to continue to do the same. Like I said, my ceiling is their floor. Keep ascending. Well, anyway, guys, you already know that is going to be my time. I greatly do appreciate you guys checking me out. And I'm absolutely grateful for you guys listening to me today. If you felt this, man, if you feel like somebody needs to hear this, please share it, man. If you have not subscribed yet to my YouTube channel, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you have not went ahead and subscribed to any of the platforms on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcast from, if you have not went ahead and followed the show, please follow the show. And like I said, I got new music coming soon. I'm working on that as well. So several different projects, trying to juggle being the best clown that I can be. Anyway, man, y'all take care. Godspeed. I greatly do appreciate you guys checking me out. And we'll see you on the next one. Be the goat, never a sheep, and don't sleep on your dreams. Peace.